Eleanor stood frozen in the doorway, clutching a small gift, as her brother's cruel words sliced through the festive warmth. "Your plate's outside with the dogs." The silence that followed stung worse than the insult. Would she fight back, or walk away forever? There was a seat for everyone except me. I stood in the doorway of the dining room holding a small wrapped gift in both hands. The house smelled like nutmeg-roasted turkey and fur. Someone had taken time with the table candles lit, name cards in careful cursive crystal glasses catching the soft light. My name wasn't there. At the head of the table sat my older brother Ethan, still broad-shouldered, still wearing that smirk like it was stitched to his face. He was slicing into the glazed turkey like he owned the moment. Maybe he thought he did. Sophie was beside him. My cousin. She wore one of my mother's old scarves, silk pale blue, the one Mom used to save for Christmas Eve services. Sophie sipped from her wine glass like she belonged here, like she'd always belonged. I looked around again. Maybe I missed something. Maybe a chair had been pulled away to make room for the pies. But no, the table was set, full, complete, without me. I turned to my mother, Margaret. She was arranging green beans in a dish with almonds avoiding my eyes. When I opened my mouth to speak, she glanced at the turkey like it had just asked her a question. "I think you forgot my seat," I said, keeping my voice low. Ethan didn't even pause, chewing. Without looking up, he said it flat clean like it cost him nothing. "It's outside with the dogs." There was a breathless silence. Sophie let out a quiet snort. One of the second cousins shifted in his chair. A fork clicked against porcelain, but no one said a word. No one laughed, no one objected. I stood there, cheeks burning. I wasn't sure what stung more, that he said it, or that everyone else let it stay in the air like a prayer no one would claim. I could have turned. I could have said something loud, made a scene. But instead, I stepped forward, set the small box down in front of Ethan's plate, then leaned in close enough that only he could hear "check under your plate." And I walked out. Didn't wait for anyone to stop me. Didn't look back. Just stepped into the December night and let the cold tell me I was still alive. When I was little, Christmas was my favorite day in the whole world. Back then, the tree stood by the living room window, not some carefully curated photo op, but a slightly lopsided fir with mismatched ornaments we'd collected over the years. Ethan and I would argue over whose turn it was to hang the glass snowflake, the one with the chipped edge. Dad would break up the fight by holding it himself and declaring, "This one's for peace, and peace doesn't pick sides." That was our dad, Henry Carter. He smelled like motor oil and pine shavings and always had a grease stain on his shirt, even at Christmas. But when he smiled, the whole room felt steady. He'd ruffle my hair and say, "You've got grit, kid. You're going to outlast all of us." I didn't know what he meant then. I thought he was just being funny. Now, I think maybe he saw something even I hadn't. Ethan used to be different, too. He and I once built a snow fort so high we couldn't see over it. I slipped on the ice trying to climb it and busted my lip, and he cried harder than I did, brought me inside yelling for Mom, wrapped me in a blanket and said, "You're not allowed to die ever." That version of him. The one who gave me the last piece of fudge and let me sit shotgun when we went to get firewood. I don't know where he went. I don't know when he left. And Mom, she used to sing while cooking. Her voice was soft, barely in tune, but I remember the way she'd hum Silent Night while peeling carrots. Sometimes she'd twirl in her slippers apron, flaring just a bit when she thought no one was looking. I looked. She used to make sure my favorite mug, white with faded snowflakes, was waiting on the table with hot cocoa and too many marshmallows. I didn't see it this year. Didn't expect to, but I still noticed. What happened to that house? What happened to the people who lived in it? Was I the only one who remembered the good parts? Because somewhere along the way, the laughter turned sharp, the warmth cooled, and Ethan started speaking for the family like it was his to interpret. My voice got smaller. My name showed up less until one day it stopped showing up at all. And still, I kept showing up, hoping it was just grief, hoping it was just stress, hoping they'd see me, but hope can go blind if you feed it long enough. and I think mine did. It didn't happen all at once. There wasn't a fight or a slammed door or some dramatic falling out. No one yelled at me to leave. No one said, "You're not family anymore." They just stopped including me. At first, it was subtle. I'd call to check in on Dad. This was back when his memory started slipping, when he'd forget the names of tools. Or call me that girl on the phone. And Ethan would answer upbeat as ever. "Dad's resting right now. I'll let him know you called." A few days later, I'd try again. "He's in a fog today." Not the best time. Eventually, I stopped hearing Dad's voice altogether. Just updates filtered through Ethan, always wrapped in concern, always protecting someone. Mom started deferring, too. I'd ask how she was holding up, and she'd say things like, "Ethan's been such a help. He really knows how to handle things. It's just easier when things go through him." At first, I didn't push. I told myself they were tired, that maybe I was being sensitive. I was living in Denver then, working long hours at a marketing firm. I sent money home every month, paid part of the roof repair without being asked, booked flights back for every major holiday. Still, I started noticing things. One Christmas, my old stocking was missing from the fireplace mantel. I found it later stuffed in the back of the hallway closet. The framed photo of me and Dad, taken on the day he gave me his old toolbox, vanished from the wall. In its place was a new photo Ethan and Sophie at the garden center, holding a flat of roses like they'd just saved the family homestead. I told myself it didn't mean anything. Then one Sunday, I logged onto social media and saw pictures from what they called an impromptu family dinner. All of them. Around the same table I used to help set, laughing, toes touching under the chairs I once sanded down with Dad. No one had called me. No one had even thought to mention it. When I asked Mom about it, she said it was last minute. "You live so far, we figured you wouldn't want the hassle." She didn't hear the way her words landed. Or maybe she did and chose to let them land anyway. From then on, the pattern was clear. Decisions were made without me about Dad's treatment, about the house, about finances. Ethan explained everything after the fact, always with a tone that made it sound like he was doing me a favor. "Didn't want to bother you while you're busy. It's just easier this way." Easier. For whom I wasn't angry. Not yet. Just confused, off balance. Like someone had slowly been turning the volume down on my voice until I couldn't hear it myself. They never told me to go. They just stopped saving me a seat. The first time I realized Sophie had moved in, she answered the phone from my mother's kitchen. I could hear the ceramic clink of the spoon against Mom's favorite mug, the one with the robins on it. Sophie laughed at something in the background, Ethan probably, and said, "Hold on your mom's elbow deep in pie dough." Your mom? That word sat heavy in my chest for days. I asked Margaret about it a week later, careful not to sound accusatory. "Is Sophie staying with you now? Just helping out?" "She's been a godsend. You know how things have been." A godsend. This was the same Sophie who 3 years earlier had borrowed Mom's emerald earrings and claimed she thought they were hers. Who lied about a missing checkbook at Thanksgiving, who once cried on the porch and said, "I don't know why everyone thinks I'm the bad one." And now here she was setting the table I used to set. Wearing the scarves Mom used to wrap around her shoulders on snowy mornings, leaving handwritten notes on the fridge turkey in the oven. Took Mom to PT. At first, I told myself it was practical. They needed someone around and I hadn't been. Not physically anyway. But slowly, Sophie stopped being a helper and became the one who knows where everything is. When I called to ask how Dad's doctor visit went, Sophie was the one who answered. When I sent flowers for Mom's birthday, Sophie texted me a thank you with a photo of Mom holding the bouquet standing beside her. The caption read, "She loved them. Great day. I wasn't in the picture. I wasn't in any picture anymore." I started asking questions. Ethan's answers were vague. "She's just around to help with errands. It's not like she's taking over." But when I visited for Dad's memorial, Sophie greeted guests at the door. She wore a black dress, simple and neat, the same one I'd worn to my uncle's funeral years ago. I recognized the hemline the way it fell just above the knee. I had left it in the closet upstairs. It wasn't hers. She stood by the coffee table pouring cider, telling stories about Dad like she'd known him better than I had. People nodded. They smiled. They believed her. And I just stood there, coat still on hands, cold, watching my place disappear piece by piece. Later that evening, I tried to bring it up to Mom. I didn't want to accuse. I just needed to know where I stood. She's just trying to help Eleanor. You've always been too sensitive about things. That's when I realized it. It wasn't that they forgot me. It was that they'd found someone easier to replace me with. 2 months before Christmas, I drove up to the house without calling ahead. I wasn't planning to go inside. I thought maybe I'd just sit in the driveway, look at the old porch swing, and remind myself of who I used to be when this place still felt like mine. But when I pulled up, the driveway was empty. No sign of Ethan's truck. No Sophie in the window. No motion in the kitchen. I stepped out anyway. My key still worked. The house was quieter than I remembered. No music, no TV. Just the hum of the heater and the faint creak of floorboards that still spoke when no one else would. I found myself drifting toward Dad's study. It was the only room no one had rearranged. Everything else in the house felt slightly off, like it had been staged to look familiar, but something was missing behind the eyes. But his study was untouched. The old recliner still sagged in the middle. His toolbox sat beneath the bookshelf, paint chipped and rusted. A clock ticked softly by the window, the one with the dusty face and brass hands that always ran 10 minutes slow. And then I saw it. The cabinet in the corner, dark wood brass handle. I'd seen him open it a dozen times growing up, but I never paid attention to what went inside. I knelt down and pulled. It stuck at first, then gave way inside a small metal safe. My breath caught. I remembered something suddenly. A long time ago, maybe high school, he'd tucked a tiny key inside his favorite book. Said it was for just in case. I reached up, scanned the shelves. Travels with Charlie by Steinbeck. Worn spine, cracked leather. The key was still there. When the safe clicked open, I didn't know what I expected. Maybe old receipts, maybe nothing. But there it was. An envelope. Thick cream paper. My name on the front written in his hand. I sat down on the floor, knees to my chest, and opened it. Inside, a notarized will dated 2 weeks before he died. Every asset, this house, the savings, the land in Red Rock Canyon was left to me. Ethan's name wasn't mentioned once. Neither was Sophie's. And behind the will, a note folded yellowed slightly at the edges. It said, "Eleanor, I see it now. I didn't before, and I'm sorry. You never asked for anything. You just stayed. You protected me when no one else did. This house is yours. You've earned it. Love, Dad." I didn't cry at the funeral. I cried on that floor. Not for the house, but because in the end, someone saw me. I didn't tell anyone I was coming. I dressed in dark jeans and a navy coat. Nothing dramatic. Nothing that screamed, "Look at me." I brought a single box wrapped in plain brown paper tied with twine. It was Christmas Eve. The Carter house still had the same string of colored lights blinking unevenly. The wreath on the door was slightly crooked. Someone had replaced the welcome mat. It used to say, "Home is where Dad is." Now it read, "Merry Season." I knocked once, then let myself in. No one heard me at first. The dining room was already full. Ethan at the head of the table, Sophie to his right, her hand resting lightly on his arm. Mom sat across smiling in that soft, distant way that used to be reserved for guests. My seat wasn't there again. This time I didn't flinch. I stepped forward, placed the box in the center of the table, and looked directly at Ethan. He blinked. "Eleanor, what are you?" I didn't give him the satisfaction of finishing the question. "Check under your plate," I said, voice low but firm. He glanced down, lifted the charger, and found a single key. It was old brass, worn smooth with use. Dad's safe key. Ethan's eyes flicked up to mine. Confusion first, then a flicker of something else. Nervousness. No, not yet. He didn't know enough to be afraid. Margaret rose halfway, her smile faltering. Eleanor, I'm not staying, I said. Just wanted to drop that off. Sophie reached for the box. Is it a gift? I looked at her for the first time all evening, looked through her. Really? In a way. She flushed, hand retreating. I turned toward the door. No one followed. No one asked me to stay. Not really. Ethan was already lifting the box's lid. Margaret said, "Wait, what is this?" I was halfway down the front steps when I heard chairs scrape, voices rise. I didn't stop. The night was sharp air cold against my throat. I walked back to my car, sat for a moment in the driver's seat, let the silence settle. Because what they found in that box wasn't wrapped in malice. It was wrapped in truth. The copy of Dad's will, the letter, a small photograph, me and him, shoulder to shoulder from the summer I helped him rebuild the fence. Nothing dramatic. Just enough. Let them read it in their own voices, in their own time. Let them sit at that table full, but with one chair always conspicuously empty. Would they still pretend I was just too sensitive? That I imagined it all? And if so, who left that key? They started calling the next morning. First, it was Margaret. Just a voicemail. "Hi, sweetie. We read what you left. It caught us off guard, that's all. We should talk. I think we all just need to breathe and maybe come together as a family." No apology, just caught off guard. Then Ethan sent a text. "Can we meet? There's a lot to discuss. I think we all misunderstood each other. Not a word about the will or the letter." Then Sophie messaged me. Just a sad face emoji. Nothing else. For a week, I let the messages pile up. They tried new angles, confusion, nostalgia, even guilt. "Your dad wouldn't want this rift, Eleanor. We're still your family. Let's not let bitterness ruin the holidays." But bitterness hadn't ruined anything. Erasure had. And the thing is, I wasn't angry anymore. I didn't want revenge. I didn't want to prove a point. I just didn't want to go back. I didn't block their numbers. I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. I just stopped responding. I think that unsettled them more than anything else. One afternoon, Ethan tried showing up at my office unannounced. My assistant sent him away. I never told her to. She just said afterward he didn't look like someone you'd want to see. She was right. A few days later, Mom called again. This time, I picked up. Her voice was quiet, fragile. "Eleanor, I think we made mistakes, but this family, it's still yours too." I waited a beat, then said I was always there. "You just lived easier when I wasn't." She didn't respond, not because she disagreed, but because there was nothing left to say. 3 weeks after Christmas, I mailed one last envelope. No return address. Inside the original photo of Dad and me. The one from the fence rebuild. The one that had been quietly taken down from the hallway wall years ago. I didn't include a note. I didn't need to. A week later, a neighbor sent me a picture. I hadn't asked for it. She just thought I'd want to know. The photo had been rehung. Not inside the Carter house, not over the fireplace or beside the dining table. It was tacked up in the old shed behind the garden Dad's tool shed. The one place no one else ever went. There it was slightly crooked, hanging above the workbench. Just a girl and her father standing side by side, smiling like the world made sense. No caption. No explanation. I stared at the image for a long time, then closed my phone. That house, it may belong to me on paper, but the real inheritance wasn't brick or timber. It was this knowing. I never needed them to admit what they did because the truth already exists, and it doesn't go away when ignored. I still live in Denver, still drink from that snowflake mug I took back quietly after the memorial. It chips a little more each winter. I let it. Sometimes people ask if I ever reconciled with my family. I tell them I was always part of the story. They just wrote around me. And now they don't get to write me out. I never asked to be seen. I just wanted to exist. If you've ever been erased but chose to remain true, just leave a single heart icon. On the cold study floor, clutching her father's letter, Eleanor realized her worth didn't depend on their acceptance. She'd been erased, but his words reminded her she was enough. Always had been. Strength wasn't in their validation, but in her choice to exist unapologetically. Eleanor's story isn't over. What would you have done in her place? Share your thoughts below or drop a heart if you've ever had to reclaim your own space. Let's keep this conversation going. When Sophia answered a smug call from her stepmother, Margaret, claiming she'd sold Sophia's childhood home out from under her, she didn't panic. Instead, a secret her father left behind sparked a plan to unravel Margaret's scheme, revealing a betrayal darker than Sophia ever imagined. The phone buzzed on my kitchen counter, its screen flashing a name that made my stomach twist. Margaret. It was a Tuesday morning, the kind where sunlight spills through the windows of my childhood home, gilding the hardwood floors my father spent years restoring. I was halfway through my coffee, emails open on my laptop, when her call shattered the quiet. Margaret never called to chat. Her voice always carried a barb, a challenge. At 32, I'd learned to brace myself for her games, but something about the timing felt off, like the air before a storm. I answered, my voice steady, curious to see what she'd planned this time. Sophia, she began, her tone dripping with smug satisfaction. I've sold the house. Papers are signed and the new owners move in next week. I hope you've learned your lesson about respecting your elders. The words hit like a slap, but I didn't flinch. The house she spoke of was my father's legacy, the one he left me when he passed 2 years ago. Every hand-carved banister, every stained glass window held memories of him. Memories Margaret seemed eager to erase. I took a slow sip of coffee, letting her words hang in the air. The house? I repeated, keeping my voice neutral. You mean Dad's house? Don't play dumb, Sophia, she snapped. The one you've been squatting in rent-free since your father died. That ends now. I found buyers who will appreciate the property. Her words were sharp, meant to wound, but they only sparked a flicker of amusement in me. She had no idea about the meeting I'd had with Dad's lawyer, Mr. Thompson, days after the funeral. She didn't know about the documents we'd signed. The truth about who owned this house. That's interesting, I said carefully. And you're sure everything's legal? She scoffed, her confidence unshaken. Of course it's legal. I'm his widow, and the house was in his name. You may have been his precious daughter, but I have rights. Her voice turned venomous. Maybe next time you'll think twice before questioning my remodeling plans. There it was, the real reason. 3 months ago, I'd stopped her from gutting the house's historic charm, the features Dad had lovingly preserved. This sale was her revenge. I hope you got a good price, I said, my tone light, almost teasing. Don't worry about the price, she retorted. Just be out by next Friday. The buyers are eager to start renovations. I could picture her smirking, imagining me scrambling to pack. If only she knew. Thanks for letting me know, I said, my voice calm. Goodbye, Margaret. As I hung up, a smile tugged at my lips. She thought she'd won, but she'd underestimated me, just as she'd underestimated Dad's foresight. I set my coffee down and dialed Mr. Thompson. This was about to get interesting, and I had a front row seat to watch her carefully laid plans unravel. The house felt alive with memories as I hung up with Margaret, her smug voice still echoing in my mind. At 32, I'd lived in this American home, sprawling across 3,000 square feet of history my entire life, except for college. Its walls, painted in the soft greens Dad chose, held stories of our laughter, our late-night talks. The garden, where his lilies bloomed in defiant bursts of white, was his sanctuary. He'd passed 2 years ago, leaving me not just the house, but a legacy I was determined to protect. Margaret's call had stirred something fierce in me, a resolve to honor him by keeping this place untouched by her greed. 5 years ago, when I was 27, Margaret entered our lives. Dad married her in a quiet ceremony, and at first she played the part of the caring stepmother perfectly. Her smiles were warm, her words sweet, promising to blend into our family. But after the wedding, her mask slipped. She'd make snide comments about my close bond with Dad, suggesting I was too old to be so attached. She'd rearrange Dad's study, move his old records to storage, and push to redecorate rooms he'd spent decades restoring. The hand-carved banisters, polished to a gleam, were outdated to her. The stained glass windows, casting rainbows across the living room, were gaudy. Dad saw through her eventually, but by then his health was fading, his strength sapped by an illness that seemed to come from nowhere. 3 months ago, her true colors flared. She announced plans to remodel the house, to rip out the hardwood floors and replace the lilies with a modern patio. I fought back, citing the house's historic value, its place in our family's heart. She backed down, but her eyes burned with resentment. Now, her attempt to sell the house was retaliation, a power play to erase Dad's memory and assert her control. But she didn't know what I knew, what Dad had ensured I'd understand when the time came. I thought back to a night in his final months when Margaret was at her weekly spa appointment. He called me into his study, his voice weak but urgent. "Sophia," he'd said, using the nickname he'd given me as a child. "Trust me, things aren't what they seem with Margaret. I've made arrangements. When the time comes, see David Thompson. He'll explain everything." I'd wanted to press him, to ask what he meant, but his eyes were heavy with exhaustion. 2 weeks later, he was gone, leaving a void that Margaret wasted no time trying to fill. Days after the funeral, I met Mr. Thompson at his office downtown, a small space cluttered with legal books and framed photos of his grandkids. He was warm, his voice steady as he laid out Dad's plan. The house, he explained, was never solely in Dad's name. Through a series of legal maneuvers, trusts, and transfers I didn't fully grasp, Dad had protected it, ensuring I was the sole beneficiary. Margaret's claim as his widow was meaningless. She had no legal right to sell. "Your father saw this coming," Mr. Thompson said, a glint of admiration in his eyes. "He wanted you safe, and this house preserved." I walked through the house now, my fingers tracing the door frames Dad had sanded smooth, the window seats where we'd read together, the garden path lined with lilies he'd tended. Each step grounded me, reminding me why I'd fight for this place. Margaret thought she could erase Dad's legacy with a signature, but she'd miscalculated. She didn't understand the depth of his foresight, the strength he'd instilled in me. I picked up a photo from the study, one of us painting the living room, both covered in specks of green but grinning. It was a reminder. This house wasn't just walls and windows. It was us. Our laughter, our love, our unshakable bond. Margaret's scheme was bold, but Dad's plan was smarter, and I was ready to see it through, to let her overconfidence lead her straight into the trap he'd set years ago. Margaret's call had left a bitter aftertaste, but as I stood in the study, surrounded by Dad's books and the scent of old wood, I felt a quiet certainty. Her smug declaration about selling the house was a misstep, a move that would unravel her plans faster than she could imagine. At 32, I'd learned patience from Dad, how to wait, watch, and let others reveal their flaws. Now, with the house's future at stake, I was ready to act, not with anger, but with the precision he'd taught me. I picked up my phone and dialed Mr. Thompson, the lawyer who held the key to Dad's carefully laid trap. "Sophia?" he answered, his voice warm with anticipation. "I was expecting you." I smiled, picturing his cluttered office, the legal books stacked high. "She did it," I said, my tone steady. "Margaret's trying to sell the house." His chuckle was soft, almost conspiratorial. "Did she now? Well, this should be interesting. Shall we set things in motion?" I nodded, though he couldn't see. "Yes, but make sure the buyers know the truth. I don't want them caught in her mess." Mr. Thompson agreed, promising to contact their lawyer immediately. As we hung up, I felt the first stirrings of victory, like a breeze before dawn. I walked through the house, my fingers brushing the cool glass of the stained windows, their colors dancing across the floor. The living room, with its 12-foot ceilings, felt like a sanctuary, each corner whispering memories of Dad. His laughter as we hung curtains, his pride when he finished the fireplace. Margaret's threat to let buyers renovate this place stung, but it also fueled me. She didn't know the house was mine. secured in a trust she couldn't touch. That knowledge was my shield, and I wielded it with care, waiting for the right moment to strike. My phone buzzed with a text from Margaret. "Keys on my desk by Thursday, Sophia. Don't make this difficult." Her words were sharp, demanding, but I saw them for what they were. Desperation masked as control. I typed back, "Don't worry, Margaret. Everything will work out." The vagueness was deliberate, a hint that I held cards she couldn't see. I set the phone down and opened a drawer in Dad's desk, pulling out a photo of us in the garden, kneeling among the lilies. His smile, broad and unguarded, reminded me why I was fighting. Not just for the house, but for him. For us. Later, Mr. Thompson called again. "The buyer's lawyer has been notified," he said, his voice tinged with amusement. "They're drafting a letter to Margaret as we speak. She'll know by this afternoon." I leaned against the kitchen counter, the same one where Dad and I used to make pancakes. "How long until she reacts?" I asked. "Not long," he replied. "She's in for a shock." I thanked him, my mind already picturing her face when the truth hit. The house with its 3,000 square feet of history wasn't hers to sell. It was mine, and I'd protect it, not with shouts, but with the quiet strength Dad had always admired. The afternoon sun was low, casting long shadows across the garden, when Margaret's Cadillac screeched into the driveway. I was kneeling among Dad's lilies, their petals soft under my fingers, when the car door slammed. Her heels clicked furiously on the stone path, and I looked up to see her storming toward me, a crumpled letter in her hand. At 32, I'd faced her barbs before, but this was different. Her carefully polished facade was cracking, rage spilling through. I stayed seated, my calm a deliberate contrast to her fury, ready for the confrontation I'd known was coming since her call. "You conniving little witch," she screamed, thrusting the letter at me. "You knew about this all along." The paper, marked with a lawyer's letterhead, trembled in her grip. I rose slowly, brushing dirt from my jeans, and met her gaze. "Knew about what, Margaret?" I asked, my voice gentle but firm. Her eyes blazed. "The trust, the property transfer. You and that lawyer plotted this behind my back." I tilted my head, letting her words hang. "No," I corrected. "Dad and Mr. Thompson arranged it. I just followed his wishes." Her face contorted, disbelief warring with anger. "Your father would never do this to me. This is a mistake." I stepped closer, the lily's scent grounding me. "He did exactly this to protect me and the house. He saw through you, Margaret. He knew what you'd try after he was gone." She flinched, her designer heels sinking into the soft soil. "That's impossible," she spat. "He trusted me, he loved me." I raised an eyebrow, my voice quiet but piercing. "Did he? Or did he let you think he did?" The color drained from her face as the truth sank in. I pressed on, each word measured. The house was never in his name. He transferred it to a trust years ago before he met you. I'm the sole beneficiary. You had no right to sell it. Her hand shook, crumpling the letter further. "You're lying," she whispered, but doubt flickered in her eyes. "Check the property records," I suggested, my tone almost kind. "They're public. Dad made sure everything was transparent when the time came." Margaret's breath hitched, her composure unraveling. "The buyers are threatening legal action," she said, her voice breaking. "Do you know how humiliating this is?" I nodded, unfazed. "Almost as humiliating as trying to throw me out of my own house or pretending to care about Dad just to get his money." She recoiled as if I'd struck her. "You don't understand my relationship with him," she snapped. I stepped closer, my voice low. "I understand more than you think. Dad told me everything. About the prenup you wouldn't sign, the withdrawals from his accounts, the men you met while he was in the hospital." Her eyes widened, shock replacing anger. "He knew," she whispered. I nodded. He knew everything. He waited, watched and planned. Like father, like daughter. For the first time, Margaret was speechless, her shoulders slumping. I pulled out my phone, holding it up. I've recorded this conversation. Want me to add it to the file Mr. Thompson's building about your fraud? Her gaze darted to the phone, panic flashing. You wouldn't, she hissed. I smiled, channeling Dad's quiet strength. Try me. She took a step back, her heels catching in the grass. This isn't over, she threatened, but her voice lacked conviction. It is, I said, my tone final. Leave the house. Leave me alone. Leave Dad's memory alone. Try anything else and everything comes out. The affairs, the money, all of it. Her eyes searched mine, calculating, but she found no bluff. Fine, she spat, turning toward her car. Keep your little victory. As she stormed off, the lawyer's letter slipped from her hand, fluttering to the ground. I picked it up, smoothing the creased paper. The legal jargon was dense, but its message was clear. Margaret's sale was fraudulent, her claim non-existent. She'd lost, and she knew it. The lilies swayed in the breeze, their beauty a silent testament to Dad's enduring presence. I slipped the letter into my pocket, my heart steady. Margaret thought she'd teach me a lesson, but she'd learned one instead, about underestimating the strength hidden in patience. Margaret's taillights had barely faded down the driveway when a stillness settled over the house, as if it sighed in relief. The garden, with its 20-foot rows of Dad's lilies, glowed under the dusk, their petals catching the last light. At 32, I'd faced her wrath and won, but the victory felt hollow without understanding the full scope of Dad's plan. I returned to the house, the oak floors creaking softly underfoot, and headed to his study. The room, with its shelves of worn novels and the fireplace he'd rebuilt, felt like a shrine to his memory. I needed answers. A final piece to make sense of his silent strategy. I began sorting through his desk, the drawers heavy with papers and mementos. My fingers brushed an envelope tucked beneath a stack of old letters. My name, Sophia, written in Dad's familiar scroll. The date, just days before his death, sent a shiver through me. I opened it, my breath catching as his words unfolded. My dearest Sophia, if you're reading this, Margaret's made her move and you've learned of the trust. I'm sorry I couldn't tell you everything. She watched too closely and I needed her to believe she'd won. His confession was raw, each sentence a revelation. He'd suspected her for years, noticing her subtle cruelties, her greed masked as love. The letter grew darker. A year into our marriage, I fell ill. Dizzy spells, weakness. It wasn't natural. David investigated and we found traces of something in my tea. Slow but deliberate. I played along, let her think I was fading, while I secured the house for you. My hands trembled, rage and grief colliding. Margaret hadn't just schemed for the house, she'd tried to steal Dad's life. He'd outsmarted her, transferring the house to a trust. But the cost was his silence, his pretense of trust in her. Forgive me for seeming distant those last months, he wrote. It was to protect you. He ended with a cryptic note. Check the fireplace behind the loose brick. There's something for you. I crossed to the fireplace, its stone warm from the day's heat. The loose brick, third from the left, came free easily, revealing a small USB drive and a scrap of paper. Show this to the police when you're ready. My pulse raced as I plugged the drive into my laptop. Videos loaded, grainy footage from hidden cameras Dad had installed. Margaret in the kitchen, slipping powder into his tea. Margaret on the phone, plotting with a man I didn't recognize, discussing the house's value after he's gone. Each clip was a dagger, proof of her betrayal. I called Mr. Thompson, my voice shaking. David, I found Dad's letter and a USB drive with videos. He was quiet, then said, Are you ready to take the next step? I stared at the screen, Margaret's face frozen in guilt. Exposing her would mean justice, but also chaos, trials, publicity, Dad's pain laid bare. Not yet, I decided. Let's keep it as insurance. David chuckled softly. Your father said you'd choose restraint. You've got his mind for strategy. I hung up, the USB drive heavy in my hand. For now, it was enough to know I held her fate, a silent power Dad had gifted me. The days after Margaret's defeat brought a quiet transformation to the house. Its 3,000 square feet felt lighter, as if Dad's spirit had reclaimed every room. I spent evenings restoring what she'd touched, repainting walls in his soft greens, rehanging curtains we'd chosen together. The garden, with its lilies stretching across 20 feet of earth, bloomed brighter, their scent a reminder of his care. At 32, I was no longer just his daughter, but the guardian of his legacy, shaped by his lessons in patience and strength. Margaret's shadow was gone, and I was ready to close this chapter. A week later, a thick envelope arrived from Margaret's lawyer. Inside was a formal document, its pages crisp with legal weight, relinquishing any claim to the house or Dad's estate. A handwritten note was tucked beside it, her script sharp. "You win, Sophia. I'm leaving the state. Keep what you know to yourself." I read it in the study, the fireplace's glow warming the room. She'd found the cameras, I realized, likely searching the house in panic after our confrontation. The USB drive's existence, even unshown, had forced her surrender. I set the note aside, feeling not triumph, but peace. Dad's plan had worked, not through confrontation, but through the threat of truth. I tended the garden daily, kneeling among the lilies as Dad once did. Their roots, hidden deep in the soil, mirrored the strength he taught me. Quiet, enduring, blooming when the time was right. One evening, as I pruned a thorny stem, I felt him near, his voice almost audible. "The strongest roots grow in silence, Sophia, hidden until they're needed." I smiled, the shears steady in my hand. He'd known this day would come, had prepared me for it with every cryptic word, every careful choice. The USB drive remained behind the fireplace brick, a silent guardian. I didn't need to use it. Margaret's departure was proof enough of its power. The house stood as it always had, its stained glass windows casting rainbows, its banisters gleaming under my touch. It was more than a home. It was a testament to Dad's love, his foresight, his unshakable belief in me. I walked through its rooms, the floors creaking softly, and felt a completeness I hadn't known since his death. Margaret had tried to steal this place, to sever our bond, but she'd failed. In the garden, under a sky streaked with dusk, I looked at the lilies, their petals unfurling in perfect defiance. They were Dad's heart, and now mine, tended with the same care he'd shown. His final lesson echoed. Timing was everything. I'd waited, watched, and let Margaret reveal her nature, just as he'd done. The house, with its history etched in every beam, was safe. Somewhere I knew Dad was smiling, his quiet strength alive in me. As I clipped a lily and set it on the kitchen table, I whispered, "We did it, Dad." The words hung in the air, a promise kept, a legacy preserved. As I stood in the garden, the lily's fragrance wrapping around me like a familiar embrace, I realized the deepest lesson Dad had left me through this ordeal with Margaret. At 32, I'd thought strength meant fighting back, matching fire with fire. But he'd shown me something wiser. Patience, he'd taught, was a weapon sharper than anger. A way to let truth unfold without losing yourself. Margaret's schemes, her attempt to sell my home, her betrayal of Dad, had crumbled not because I shouted or struck, but because I waited, trusted his plan, and let her overconfidence unravel her. Each moment I held back, each cryptic reply I gave, was a choice to honor his belief in timing. The house, with its 3,000 square feet of memories, stood because of that restraint, its walls a testament to the power of silent roots growing strong beneath the surface. Dad's letter, the USB drive, the trust. They were tools. But the real gift was his philosophy. Strength lies in knowing when to act and when to watch. I clipped a lily, its thorns pricking my thumb, and smiled. Life, like this garden, demanded care and patience, a willingness to let things bloom in their season. Margaret had taught me about deception, but Dad taught me about trust. In myself, in him, in the quiet justice that comes from waiting. As I placed the lily on his old desk, I knew I'd carry this lesson always. True victory isn't in outshining your enemies, but in outlasting them, letting their own choices reveal their defeat while you stand steady in the light of what you've preserved. I'm Edith Harper, 30 years old, and I never imagined my sister Clara's Yale graduation would be the day my parents tore me apart in front of 600 people. That day was supposed to be a celebration, maybe even a chance to stitch our broken family back together. Instead, I found out I'd been wiped from the program. Family photos. Even their will. The pain hit like a freight train. But they didn't know I'd uncovered the secret they'd buried my whole life. Growing up in a ritzy Seattle suburb, I lived in Clara's shadow. She's 4 years younger. Their golden child. My parents, Richard and Margaret Harper, didn't hide their favoritism. They wore it like a crown. Clara was their pride. I was the burden they tolerated. My childhood bedroom was plastered with math Olympiad medals and honor roll certificates. They meant nothing to my parents. I was 14 when I won the state math competition. I raced home, clutching my trophy, heart pounding with hope. Maybe this would make them see me. I burst through the door. Beaming. My mother glanced up from her coffee. That's nice. Edith, did you grab Clara's piano music? Like I asked. My trophy ended up on a shelf. Forgotten? Clara's art club ribbons framed in the living room. I can still see their bright colors, mocking me every time I walked by. High school wasn't any better. Clara got chauffeured to ballet in my father's shiny Tesla. I took a crowded bus 2 hours to coding boot camps. When I got into UCLA with a partial scholarship, my father shrugged. It's not Yale, but it's better than community college. Clara's acceptance to an AP art class. They threw a dinner at a 5-star restaurant. I worked 3 jobs to afford college. Mornings, blending smoothies for $8 an hour. Evenings, folding clothes at a mall for 10. Weekends, tutoring kids in algebra for 15. My body ached. My eyes burned. But dropping out wasn't an option. My parents made it clear their money was for Clara's bright future. I overheard my father once, his voice sharp in the kitchen. Clara, has real potential. He didn't know I was in the hallway. Or maybe he didn't care. Those words carved themselves into me. At 19, during a rare visit home, I helped my mother sort files. A paper slipped behind a drawer. I pulled it out a trust fund document. Only Clara's name was listed. My stomach dropped. I held it up, voice shaking. What's this? My mother snatched it away, her face tight. Just an old document. We've updated it. Her hands trembled, and her eyes darted away. Something wasn't right. My best friend, Sophie Carter, got it. We met at UCLA freshman orientation, bonding over late-night pizza and shared dreams. She became the sister I never had. Your parents are toxic. Edith, she'd say, her voice firm. You deserve better. Her family welcomed me for Thanksgiving. When going home felt like walking into a freezer, Sophie's mom would hug me, her arms warm, smelling of lavender. Those moments kept me going. Despite the years of being ignored, I still craved my parents' love, idly awake, imagining them saying, "We're proud of you." Foolish. Maybe, but hope is stubborn. When Clara's Yale graduation invitation arrived, it felt like a lifeline. Clara called me herself, which was rare. It'd mean a lot if you came, she said. The whole family will be there. Her voice was soft. No trace of the usual distance between us. We weren't close, but there was no real bad blood. She just accepted the throne my parents built for her. That call sparked something in me. Maybe time had softened my parents' coldness. Maybe this was a chance to heal the wounds that had shaped my life. I let myself believe it. I was wrong. Looking back, I see how naive I was to think people who'd shown me their truth for 30 years would change overnight. But hope blinds you. It makes you ignore the cracks in the foundation until the whole house collapses. That invitation to my sister's Yale graduation felt like a rope thrown to a drowning woman. I grabbed it, desperate for a chance to fix our broken family. I'm a software engineer in San Francisco now, and I wanted to walk into that ceremony, proving I'd made it. Despite my parents' neglect, I spent $1,200, 2 months of savings on an emerald green dress from Nordstrom. The silk hugged my skin, cool and smooth, making me feel like I could face anything. I told myself it was worth it, an armor for my confidence. Deep down, I knew I was trying to buy their approval. The flight from San Francisco to New Haven took 6 long hours. I sat by the window, the hum of the plane vibrating in my chest. My hands kept folding and unfolding the invitation, creasing its edges. I replayed childhood memories, my mother's dismissive glances, my father's cold silences. Hope wrestled with dread. The elderly woman next to me, Beatrice, noticed my fidgeting. "Family event?" she asked, her voice soft. "My sister's Yale graduation," I said. She smiled, eyes crinkling. "You must be proud." I nodded, swallowing the truth. Pride was only half of what churned inside me. 4 years ago, I brought my ex-boyfriend, Liam, to Thanksgiving at my parents' house. I hoped they'd see me through his eyes. Instead, they barely spoke to him, showering my sister with questions about her internship. Liam's fork scraped his plate in silence. Later, he sat on the porch, his breath visible in the chilly air. "Is it always like this?" he asked. I nodded, shame burning my cheeks. 2 weeks later, he was gone. My family's coldness was a weight too heavy for him. I couldn't blame him. Checking into my New Haven hotel, I watched families buzz with excitement. Parents in Yale sweatshirts snapped photos, their laughter echoing. My chest ached with longing. My phone buzzed a text from my best friend. "Sophie, you're enough," it read. Her words were a lifeline, but they couldn't untie the knot in my stomach. My therapist, Dr. Laura Bennett, had warned me before I left. "Manage expectations," she said. "People don't change overnight." I practiced greetings in my hotel mirror. "Good to see you." Too casual. "I've missed you." Toraf. Nothing fit the mess of our family. While packing my purse for the next day, I found a plain manila envelope inside. A faint coffee stain marked one corner. I didn't remember packing it. My fingers brushed its rough surface, but a call from my sister interrupted me. She confirmed our meeting time. Her voice clipped. I set the envelope aside, my mind already racing toward tomorrow. That night, I dreamed of our old house. I wandered its halls, searching for photos with me in them. Every frame was empty. I woke up, heart pounding, the dream too real. Morning came fast. I applied makeup with shaky hands, pinned my hair into a sleek updo. Staring in the mirror, I made a promise. No matter what happened, I'd keep my dignity. I'd built a life without their help. Today, I'd show them who I'd become. The envelope sat in my purse. I'd forgotten for now. I had no idea it held the truth that would shatter everything. Yale's old campus buzzed with energy that morning. Navy banners fluttered against stone buildings. Families in crisp suits and dresses clutched flowers, their chatter filling the air. My emerald dress felt like a shield, but my stomach churned as I spotted my parents near the entrance. My father stood tall in a navy suit, probably costing $3,000. My mother's beige Chanel dress screamed wealth. They laughed with another couple, but their smiles vanished when they saw me. "You're early," my mother said, her voice cold as ice. No hug, no smile, just a flick of her eyes. I swallowed hard. "Wanted to find my seat," I said, keeping my tone even. My father checked his watch. "Your sister's with the graduates. We need our reserved spots." Before I could reply, a tall man approached, arm around my mother's shoulders. She lit up. "This is Ethan, your sister's fiancé," she said, voice warm now. "This is her older sister. Not their daughter, just an extension of their star child." Ethan shook my hand, his smile genuine. "Heard about you," he said. I wondered what he'd heard in their 3-year engagement. A student volunteer handed me a program as we walked to the seating area. I flipped to the family acknowledgements. My sister thanked our amazing parents, and Ethan, no mention of me. My breath caught, the paper crinkling in my grip. Nearby, I overheard my mother talking to another parent. "We're so blessed with our only child," she said. Only child. The words slammed into me. I'd braced for coldness, but this was erasure. My father gestured to the front rows, reserved with name cards. "These are for immediate family," he said, voice low. "Find a seat in the general section." I froze, my heels sinking into the grass. They walked to their seats without looking back. I found a spot 10 rows back, surrounded by strangers. From there, I watched them pose for photos with Ethan. All smiles. They looked perfect, minus one unwanted daughter. A photographer approached me. "With the Harper family," he asked. "I'm their daughter," I said. He checked his list, frowning. "Sorry, I'm told to shoot only your parents and Ethan. Not family. Just an extra." My throat tightened. Near the refreshment area, I saw a display of family photos. My sister's milestones glowed in polished frames. A beach vacation shot from 10 years ago caught my eye. I remembered standing in it, sand between my toes. Now, it showed only 3 people, an awkward gap where I'd been cropped out. They hadn't just sidelined me today. They'd erased me from their history. My stomach twisted, eyebile rising. This wasn't favoritism. This was deliberate. The ceremony started. 600 graduates in black gowns marched in, the Yale band blaring. Crimson sashes swayed as they took their seats. The president's speech about achievement droned on, but I barely heard it. My mind replayed every slight the program. The seating. The photos. My sister's name rang out early. Magna cum laude. The crowd clapped. From my seat, I saw my father wipe a tear. I'd never seen him cry. Not even at my UCLA graduation, which they skipped for a work trip. My mother beamed, her pearls glinting. During the family recognition segment, parents stood for their graduates. When my sister's name was called, my father didn't just stand. He raised his hand, catching the dean's eye. The dean handed him the microphone. My heart pounded. This wasn't planned. "My wife and I are so proud of our daughter," my father began, voice booming over 600 people. "Our only daughter. A blessing since birth?" My pulse roared in my ears. Did he just say that she's perfect? Exceeding every expectation. He went on. "She embodies Harper excellence." Word cut deeper, sharp and intentional. My mother took the microphone, her smile polished. "We're thrilled to honor our true family today," she said. "We've updated our will to reflect exactly who that is." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Even strangers sensed the venom. My sister shifted, eyes darting. "Uncomfortable." Ethan frowned, confused. The dean, flustered, grabbed the microphone. "Thank you for those words," he said, forcing a smile. "Let's continue." I sat there, numb. 600 people had just heard my parents disown me. Whispers buzzed around me. A woman nearby muttered, "Did they disinherit? Someone at a graduation?" Humiliation burned my cheeks. I'd come hoping for a bridge, not a guillotine. Tears stung, but I blinked them back. I wouldn't let them see me break. As the ceremony dragged on, anger flickered beneath the shock. Cold, focused anger. Then I remembered the envelope in my purse. My hands, steady now, reached for it. Something told me it held answers. As the choir sang, I slipped out, clutching the envelope. Whatever was inside, I needed to know now. The choir's voices faded as I slipped away from the Yale ceremony, in my heels clicking on the stone path to Sterling Library's restroom. My hands shook, clutching the coffee-stained envelope. I locked myself in a stall, the cold marble chilling my skin through my dress. I tore open the envelope, heart pounding. Inside, papers were neatly clipped together. The first one stopped my breath. An adoption certificate. I was adopted by my parents at 4 years old. In 1990. My whole life, I thought I was born to them in Seattle. This said otherwise. The paper's official seal stared back, mocking everything I knew. The next document was a birth certificate. My biological mother was listed as Emily Foster, from a small town in Oregon. No father named. My knees buckled. I gripped the stall wall, the metal cold under my fingers. Another paper showed my mother's medical records. She'd had 3 miscarriages before adopting me. 2 years later, my sister was born, their miracle child. My hands trembled as I flipped to bank statements. My father had sent $12,000 every month to an EF trust, starting when I was adopted. The payments stopped 6 years ago. Each entry was a punch, a proof of a secret they'd buried. Then I found a letter, handwritten in neat cursive. Dear Edith, it began, I'm Emily Foster, your biological mother. My throat tightened. She'd been my father's assistant 30 years ago. They had an affair while my mother struggled with infertility. When Emily got pregnant, my father paid her to disappear. He arranged a private adoption, promising I'd have a better life. She was 24, scared, and alone. She agreed, thinking it was best. In return, he set up a trust, sending her money to keep quiet. My eyes burned, tears blurring the ink. She'd tried to reach me, but his lawyers blocked her. 6 years ago, she stopped taking the payments, guilt eating her alive. The letter said my sister knew. At 15, she'd found the adoption papers while digging for her passport. My parents swore her to secrecy, saying it would ruin the family. She'd kept quiet, watching them treat me like nothing. A photo was clipped to the letter. Emily, 54, had my hazel eyes, my freckles. The resemblance hit like a wave. A final note was from Sophie, my best friend. I'm sorry for hiding this. She wrote, Emily found me on LinkedIn. I knew you needed the truth. Sophie had slipped the envelope into my purse. Knowing today would break me without it. Memories flooded back, sharp and painful. My mother's cold stares, like I was an intruder. My father's distance, never hugging me. Family jokes about me not having their business sense or artistic flair. They weren't jokes. They were truths. They hid. I saw it now, the resentment in my mother's eyes. Forced to raise her husband's mistake. My sister's birth gave them a real daughter, making me disposable. The papers shook in my hands, crinkling loudly in the silent stall. Everything made sense. The erased photos, the will, the public disownment. They weren't just rejecting me. They were erasing evidence of my father's betrayal. I stood, legs unsteady, and checked my reflection in the mirror. My makeup held, but my eyes screamed with rage and clarity. The shock was gone, replaced by a cold, sharp focus. I'd been invited to this graduation as a formality, maybe to keep up appearances for my sister's fiancé. But now I had the truth. It was a weapon, heavy in my hands. I tucked the envelope into my purse, my fingers brushing its rough edges. The ceremony was still going. I had to go back. The truth had rewritten my life in minutes. Now, I had to decide what to do with it. The Yale reception sparkled in Branford Courtyard. White tents glowed under string lights. Champagne-flutes clinked, and floral arrangements perfumed the air. My family stood at the center. A perfect tableau. My parents and sister laughed with the dean, their ease a stark contrast to the envelope burning in my hand. Ethan, her fiancé, lingered nearby, scrolling his phone. I straightened my shoulders, the silk of my emerald dress cool against my skin. My heels sank into the grass as I walked toward them. Eyes followed me, whispers trailing. They'd heard my parents' speech. They knew something was off. My mother saw me first. Her smile flickered, then hardened. She whispered to my father, whose gaze snapped to me, cold and sharp. My sister turned last, her eyes wide with something like fear. I think you've misunderstood today's invitation, my father said, voice low, meant to dismiss. This is for family only. My throat tightened, but I held my ground. Family. I said, louder than I meant. That's what I want to talk about. Or should I call you by your first name now? His jaw clenched, a vein pulsing in his temple. This isn't the place for a scene, he hissed. We can meet privately later. Privately, I shot back. Like the speech where you disowned me in front of 600 people, or the family photos you cropped me out of, or the will you announced during her ceremony. Heads turned. The dean shifted. Uneasy. A staff member hovered, waiting for a signal. Security, my father muttered, barely audible. I raised my voice. I'd like to speak with my family first. If they refuse, we'll finish the public conversation you started. My mother stepped forward, her smile a mask. You're making a spectacle, she said, voice syrupy. You've always been so emotional. This is why we've had to distance ourselves. Distance, I said, pulling the adoption certificate from the envelope. I held it up, just for them to see. Is that what you call hiding this? Did you think I'd never find out? My mother's face paled, her lips parting. My sister looked at the ground, her hands twisting. Ethan's brow furrowed. Sensing the shift, my father stayed calm, but his eyes betrayed him. Put that away, he growled. Why, I asked. My voice steady now. Afraid people will know I'm not your daughter, that I'm from your affair with Emily Foster, that you paid her $12,000 a month to keep quiet, that my sister's known since she was 15 and watched you treat me like garbage. Ethan stepped closer. What's she talking about? He asked my sister. She stayed silent, her face a storm of guilt and fear. My father's control cracked. You ungrateful, he started, voice rising. We gave you a home, an education, opportunities most kids dream of. And you drag up old lies to ruin your sister's day? I laughed, sharp and bitter. You gave her everything. I got the bare minimum and a lifetime of neglect. Now I know why. I was never your daughter. I was proof of your mistake. The crowd edged closer, pretending not to eavesdrop. Their murmurs buzzed like static. My mother tried to salvage it. She's been struggling with mental health, she announced, loud enough for nearby guests. We've tried to help, but she refuses treatment. Her lie hit like a slap. My own mother, painting me as unhinged to save face. I wasn't that scared girl anymore. Open it, I said, handing the envelope to Ethan. See what family you're joining. He hesitated, glancing at my sister. Her silence was answer enough. He took it, flipping through the papers. His face shifted from confusion to horror. You knew about this, he asked her, voice low. My father lunged, grabbing for the envelope. This is private, he snarled. I stepped back. Private, I said. You made it public when you disowned me? I'm family. Like it or not, you adopted me. You raised me. You can't erase that. My mother's mask shattered. You were a mistake, she hissed, venom dripping. A reminder of his betrayal I had to face every day. Then we had our real daughter. You were nothing compared to her. Her words cut, but the crowd's gasps told me she'd gone too far. My father grabbed her arm, trying to hush her. Too late. Her truth was out. Raw and ugly. A woman approached Professor Nguyen, my sister's advisor. Her presence was calm, authoritative. This needs to move elsewhere, she said, eyeing my parents. It's causing distress, including to one of my students. She nodded toward my sister, whose eyes glistened with unshed tears. Ethan kept reading, his expression darkening. It's all true, isn't it? He said, stepping away from my sister. You knew and let them do this. She whispered. She's not my sister. The words hung, heavy. She flinched, like she wanted them back. There it is, I said, voice quiet, but firm. The truth? My father lost it. You will leave now, he shouted, finger jabbing the air. Take these lies and get out of our lives. I don't know who forged these papers, but you won't destroy what we've built. I held his gaze. Forged. You think I faked a government adoption certificate, Emily's letter. Your bank statements. His eyes flickered with panic. He knew I had him. The crowd grew, drawn to the chaos. My parents, masters of image, watched their facade crumble. How dare you, my father roared. We took you in when no one wanted you, gave you our name, and you humiliate us. His words confirmed it all. No denial, just rage at being caught. My mother sobbed, not from guilt, but shame. My sister stood frozen, torn. Ethan backed away, shaking his head. Professor Nguyen touched my arm. You've said enough, she murmured. Leave with your dignity. She was right. I hadn't come for revenge, just truth. I'd gotten it at a cost. I didn't want to destroy your family. I said to them. I wanted to be part of it. That's not happening. So this is goodbye my way. I turned, head high. Tears held back. Ethan's voice followed. I need time, he told my sister. My mother wailed. Look what you've done. I kept walking, the envelope heavy in my hand, their perfect world cracking behind me. 1 year later, the wounds from that Yale graduation still sting, but they're healing. I called Sophie right after leaving the courtyard. Her voice was a lifeline. We talked for 3 hours. Papers spread on my hotel bed, like a map of lies. I'm sorry I hid it, she said, voice cracking. You needed to see it yourself. She was right. 2 weeks later, I met Emily in a Portland cafe. My hands shook around my latta. She had my hazel eyes, my freckles. I've dreamed of this for 26 years, she said, her cup trembling. She was 24, pregnant, when my father paid her to vanish. His lawyers blocked her later attempts to reach me. We're building something now, not just mother-daughter, but real. My sister sent a letter 2 months after. I don't expect forgiveness, she wrote. We met in Hartford. Atense lunch. I found the adoption papers at 15, she said, stirring her coffee. They said it'd destroy us. She stayed silent, thinking I was fine. No sisterhood sparked, but we understood each other's scars. Ethan reached out 4 months later. He'd ended their engagement. It wasn't just you, he said over coffee. Their lies ran deep tax scams. More? My parents faced fallout. My father's board questioned his ethics. My mother withdrew. Her social status cracked. He sent a $500,000 settlement offer for my silence. I mailed it back. Unopened. Therapy with doctor. Bennett saved me. You're not the problem, she said. You survived their failures. I faced my fear of never being enough. Sophie's my rock. Her hugs like home. Emily introduced me to cousins. An aunt? All warm. New questions? My tech firm promoted me to lead developer 6 months ago. I shape stories now. Honest ones. Some days, the pain creeps back. I wonder if I could have earned their love. Those moments fade faster now. Family isn't blood or papers. It's love. Trust. People who stay when it's hard. Sophie. Emily. My new relatives. They're mine. Truth hurt. But it freed me. I'm not defined by their rejection. I choose my worth every day.